I like to doodle, and recently I did this, so I decided why not make this a technical exercise. Hello my friends, Rob here from Button Press Graphics, back with another Inkscape tutorial, and a little bit different with this video too, because as I said in the intro, this one is going to be more of a technical exercise. When I come up with little ideas, sometimes they will make it into my little sketchbook. And my wife saw this one and decided that this was an amazing little doodle and she wanted me to create it. So when I asked you lovely people out there, you all agreed. So that is what we're going to be doing today. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, full disclosure, I have tried doing this a couple of different ways, and with Inkscape there is always a multitude of different ways that you can achieve the same result, and this is one of the ones that I have decided was quite good to use. So let's get started. Now first, I have snapping turned on and I am using my circle and ellipses tool found right here on the left hand side, and I'm just going to create a circle. By holding shift and control, I am going to make sure I lock the proportions so I can get the exact size that I want. Now this is going to be important later on, but I want to get the dimensions exactly correct. Now if I'm going to separate this up like I intend to, I am going to need to make sure that the dimensions for this shape are an even number, so I'm going to round them up. Now I want to separate one corner of this circle into sections. It makes it a whole lot easier to get the alignments that I want to do later all squared away perfectly. So in order to do this, I am going to make sure that I can multiply whatever dimensions here I have by 8. So at the moment I have 724 pixels by 724 pixels. So I'm going to up these to 800. Now we're going to convert this to a path, but before we do, I am going to grab this circle node right here and I'm going to bring it around until we get to the bottom right here. Now as you saw, there are sometimes glitches where it will select a different mode like this. As you can see, it is now creating a straight line, and that is not what we need. So you can change this mode up in the top properties toolbar right here. Now if you want to get back to a full circle, this is the button you press right here and it will go back to a full circle. But in order to get around here and get it perfectly vertical, I'm going to hold control and I am going to select until we get down to the very bottom. However, if you have a problem and you cannot seem to get this angle, so you've got the 90-degree angle here and then the curve, then you can come back and select this button right here, and that will make sure that you don't have it simply cutting off in a straight line. Once you have that sorted, you can then turn this into a path by going to Path, Object to Path. Now if we was to go to our node tool, as you can see, we have just a standard path. Now I'm going to change the color of this as well just for now, just so I can get a lighter color, and the color that I'm going to put over the top will be slightly different so you can differentiate between the two. And now we have what we need. We can look at the dimensions. As you can see, we now have 800 pixels by 800 pixels. So this is perfectly symmetrical as we needed it. And we are going to create some rectangles. Now the rectangle we're going to create to begin with is just going to be a standard rectangle like so. But now we can come back to our width and our height and we can change this to exactly what we need. Now the width isn't really important, we just need to make sure that it covers the entirety of this circle and then leaves quite a little bit of room on the end. Once we have that, we can come back to our height and we can change this to 400, half of our dimensions for the circle. With that done, we are going to go to Path, Object to Path again, and then using our Select tool, we are going to drag this down until it snaps onto the center point right here of the circle. Once you have, you can select this object and then you can Control and D or simply right click and hit duplicate. This is going to duplicate another piece like so, and this is going to set it right here. Now that we have both of these rectangles, I'm just going to slightly extend them away from the circle just a little bit more, just to give me more room to work with. And then next we are going to duplicate both of these shapes again. So again, Control and D to duplicate. And then I am going to select them again to get the rotation handles, and holding Control, I am going to rotate them until they are vertical. Now we're just going to drag this down, snap them on top as well. And that is it done. Now we have the shapes that we need. We just have to select these rectangles and I'm going to change them to a lighter blue. And then deselect everything by clicking off the canvas. And now I want to select the circle that's at the bottom and raise that to the top. So like I showed you in last week's video, you can do this by holding Alt and then using your scroll wheel to cycle through until you get to the circle. And there we go. We now have the circle selected and we can come to this button right here to raise it to the top. Now with that done, I am going to hold Control and press A. This is just simply selecting all. Alternatively, you can click and drag a bounding box around every one of the shapes and you will have the same effect. With that done, we are going to go to our shape builder and you will have something that looks like this. Now to begin with, we just need the 4 circular shapes right here. I'm going to click on each one of the 4. Next, we do not need these 2 at the bottom protruding, so we're going to hold Shift and then when it turns pink, we're going to click them to get rid of them. And finally, we're going to create rows by joining these 2 together and then joining these 3 at the bottom together, and you will have something that looks like this. Now done, we're going to select the tick to accept it, and we have our shapes. Now the reason I have done all of this in this way, because I realize that using the corners LPE is a really good way of creating the curved little star points that I wanted while still staying with the same geometry and the curves. So what I mean by this is I'm going to select this shape and then I'm going to come over to my edit nodes. With my node tool selected, you will have this option right here, Add Corners LPE. Now this is the live path effect of corners, and it's just a shortcut in order for you to get to it quickly. So when you select it, you will now have these circular nodes right by the side of every one of your corner nodes, like you can see here. Now what I want to do with this is I don't want to touch these 2 nodes right here, but these 3 nodes on this side I do. So I'm going to create a bounding box around them, and that will select all 3 nodes at the same time, meaning that when I select one of these circular nodes and I move it away, you will instantly get the curve that you want. Now I'm going to just have a curve around there, and that looks around perfect to me, and as you can see, it's keeping the dimension and the curve where they join together. Now if I go to Path, Object to Path, we have the exact shape that we want. Alternatively, you can hold Control, Shift and press C to go object to path. Now I'm going to do the same with this piece right here. Now when it comes to this piece, we are going to get rid of the nodes that we don't need, because this is going to be the bottom piece. Now that means these two nodes are not needed, because these two nodes are not going to make the straight line from this node to this node any straighter. Now we are going to go back to our LPE, we're going to select it, and this time we are not going to highlight all of the nodes, we're just going to use this one right here, and we are going to move this until that little triangle stops moving, because it will get stuck on the node. When you see that happen, you can stop and release. So as you can see, now we have that perfect curve. And now we're going to come back down to this one right here. We're going to give that a select, and we're going to move that along again until the triangle stops moving right there. And this gives us the curves that we need. With that done, we can then Control, Shift and C in order to convert it to a path. And with that done, we now have the basic shapes on the outside, but with these four, with each section, we can select the LPE like so, and then we can select all the nodes at the same time and reduce them until we get that perfect curve, as you can see right here. Once you've finished, of course, Control, Shift, C to convert to a path. Now with these, I'm just trying to get the little triangles to point to the exact moment where they both join together. So as you can see with this little triangle here, I've tried to get it as close as I can, that as soon as both of these shapes touch each other, that's where this is. And there we go, we now have our shapes. So now with that done, we can move on to copying this and creating our final shape. Now in order to do this, the best way I have found is by making sure that you get them all selected, and then we join all of these together. So we go to Path, Union. Or you can simply hold Control and press the plus on the number pad. But once you have this effect, you can then duplicate by right clicking and selecting duplicate, or Control and D. And this time we are going to use this button which says Object Flip Horizontal. With that done, we are going to hold Control and we are just going to slide this over until it snaps into place like so. Again, we can now Control and A, which is select all, and we can come back, Path, Union. Again, we're going to Control D to duplicate, but this time we're going to flip it vertically and then do exactly the same, holding Control. I'm going to slide this up, and there you go. We now have the pattern that we need. But again, just Control A, and then we're going to go Path, Union. At the moment, there is nothing in these little star pattern shapes. There is just blank space, and this blue is the actual shape. We want to reverse that. We can do that simply by coming to our squares and rectangles tool, creating a new rectangle over the top, and Control A to select everything. We can go to Path and Exclusion. And just like that, we now have the shapes that we need. And we can now go to black, and you can see it a whole lot better. But in order to get this to look very abstract, we are just going to need to add a few bits of shading and a few circles. Now, in order to do that, I am going to go to my circles and ellipses. I'm going to snap onto the center point, and then holding Shift and Control, I'm going to drag this out. And as you can see, I have still got these settings set by default because that's what I used last. but we want the full circle. So I'm going to select this button and it is going to give us our full circle. Now this one is just intended to be a background. So I'm going to use white for this. If I open my fill and stroke menu with this button right here, I can now select the color that I want. So the color that I am going to use, I'm going to use a very light blue, something just like so. And then I am going to lower this to the bottom by going back to my select tool and selecting this button right here. And now I have my background. I don't have to use this background. I can use whatever color that I want, but I do just want it to be slightly off white. I don't want it to be any major color change. With that done, I can now duplicate that shape. And this one, I am going to make a darker blue, but I am not going to be using the same principles. I am going to be using a gradient. And in this case, it's going to be a radial gradient. So let me get the dark blue that I want, like so. And I am going to go to this radial gradient. And you will get something that looks like this. Now, in order to get the effect that I want to switch this around. You can do that by going to this button right here. Now the center is going to be transparent, whereas the outer ring is not. However, there is a very gradual blur going on right here. And I want to try and elongate that so I can get it just on this side and this side. So in order to do that, I'm just going to zoom out slightly and I'm going to come to this node, and holding control, I'm going to slide that up. And as you can see, this gives it a really cool effect when it comes to the outer rim here. But again, it is still a little bit too dark and there isn't enough transparency in the middle. But you can still get away with that because you can go to this bar right here, and this is the start point where it's transparent. This is the end point where it's completely solid, and there is a gradual blur in between. However, if I was to grab this and slide this along, I can make that gradual blur turn into much more of a sharp blur going around. So around there would be perfect for me. And I'm going to make sure that this one is also quite long if I want to make sure that it has much more of a curve going around here. So just like that, you can make a gradient or a shading effect on each side. And if you want it to be a lot more gradual, you can of course move this in. And I suggest just playing around with it, get it looking exactly as you want. Zoom out if you need to and you want to elongate it even more. I think something around there looks quite good. Finally, the last step I want to do with these circles is I want to duplicate again. And now I'm going to turn this one completely black. However, with this one, I'm going to drop this to the bottom. So this will be behind the circle that we colored as very pale blue. And now I'm just going to put a blur onto it. Now the blur doesn't look very good, but it is showing me a few issues that we have. For example, you can see how this is not lined up correctly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the black shape. And then I am going to hold shift and I'm going to just bring this up a little bit until it snaps onto both the bottom and the top. So it covers the entirety of the circle. Now I'm going to select the blurred circle again. And I am going to make sure that this blur is set in a different way. I am using my node tool, and as you can see, there are these nodes here with the little lines coming from them. These are going to dictate the horizontal or the vertical blur. Now I don't want there to be any vertical blur at all, so I'm going to pull this right the way down until it won't go any further. And I am going to extend this blur away. Now next, what I want to do before anything else is I want to create some lines. The lines are what set this apart from everything else, so we're going to need to create some tapered lines here. Now in order to do this, I'm going to use my circle and ellipses tool again. This time I'm going to come from here and go all the way to the end, like so, and then I'm going to turn it black because otherwise you will not be able to see it. Now what this will do, as you can see at the edges, is this naturally gives you a really good tapered stroke, even though it is not a stroke, it's an ellipse. So I'm going to convert this to a path by going path, object to path. And now I am just going to use my select tool and I'm going to hold control, drag it down until it snaps onto the top. But before I let go of the left click, I am going to press the space bar. And again, I'm going to come down. I'm going to try and get it in the middle. And at this point, if you want to turn snapping off, please feel free to do so. It might get in the way. So turn snapping off. I'm going to zoom right in. And then I'm going to hold control, drag this down until it looks like it is completely center. And when it is, I am going to let go, and then we're going to do this again. Control D, drag it down, and of course you can just press the space bar to stamp a copy. Again, stamp a copy, and with this bottom one, I'm going to turn snapping back on, and again, we have the look that we want. Now I'm just going to take one of these, I'm going to duplicate again, and this time I'm going to select it and select it a second time to get the rotation handles on, and then I'm just going to hold control while I spin it around so you get this vertical line instead. And I'm going to also click it again as well to get to the resize handles up, and then I'm going to drag the resize handles to the top right here because I do not want the vertical lines to go over the edge of the circle. So we're going to get them to go there instead. And now I'm just going to repeat this by clicking it, Control D to duplicate and move this along, and then again stamp, move along and let go. Finally, the last step is an extra little step that I used, and I thought, yeah, it looks quite good. You can tell me if you agree or not. I'm going to select the black shape right here, and again I'm going to hold Alt and select, and that way we can select the right shape. And now with that selected, I'm going to duplicate this, and then I'm going to use my dropper tool when I go to my fill and stroke menu. As you can see, it is completely black. I'm going to come down to this little icon here to use my dropper tool, and I'm going to select this shape right here. And you will get something that looks like this. However, I'm going to put a slight little blur onto it. And I think that personally looks really cool. However, you can choose a blend mode on top, as you will get some very different designs coming up. As you can see with overlay, you can see the kind of effect this one has. And you can choose something like color dodge to get that kind of effect, or you can even go with hard light, soft light, or anything that you want. have a play around with it. Now, if you've got any other ways that you think I should have done this project, then please, by all means, let me know in the comments down below, because I can think of a multitude of different ways that this could be achieved. But I really like this one, and I think this is an easy method to use. So I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts and opinions. Get a design that you've scribbled out on a little notepad or something along those lines and see if you can recreate it in Inkscape. You'll be amazed at how much fun it can be. Now, my friends, thank you for watching. Give me a thumbs up if you liked this video. Give me a thumbs down if you didn't. And I will see you next time. Did you know that you can become a member of the Button Press Graphics YouTube channel? Well, now you do. You will get a lot of added benefits and you will directly support the channel, enabling me to make much better content in the future. Also, you can send in your artwork into the Creative Corner. This is a regular section where I will showcase your work in a future video. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to bid you all a fond farewell, and I will see you next time.